You are listening to the Knightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever Team, 386-690-1636.
Welcome to the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. We're going to double up on our college basketball check-ins. On this episode, we will be joined by Frank Murtaugh, the Memphis Flyer and Memphis Magazine, to talk about the Tigers, and our Knightline Sports Network basketball analyst Ben Stout will be here to talk about UCF. They will be along throughout the course of the program. And of course, on the hardwood, Houston continues to lead the American, 22-4 overall, 11-2 in conference. SMU one game back at 10-3, 19-6 overall. And rounding out the top five, which gets that first round bye, Memphis 9-5, 15-9 overall. Tulane at 9-5, 12-11 overall. And Temple 8-5, 15-9 overall. The men's basketball player of the week is Ty Strickland at Temple, as he helped them in a pair of victories last week, 19 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, and he scored a career-high 27 in their win over SMU last week. The freshman of the week, Darius Johnson of UCF, he was consistent as the Knights went 2-1 on the week, averaging 11.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 5.3 assists per game. Turning to the women's side, UCF, about to finish off a regular season championship, 12-1 in conference, 20-3 overall, and breaking into the USA Today top 25 in the 25th slot. South Florida second at 9-3, 19-7 overall. Tulane is third, 9-4, 18-7 overall. SMU 6-4, 12-10 overall, and Temple rounding out the top five at 7-5, 12-11 overall. The player of the week in women's hoops, Bethany Manunga of South Florida, had 22 points, 15 rebounds, and played all 40 minutes in their 54-45 win against Cincinnati. Also added 4 steals in that victory. And she is also, of course, a freshman, so also she knocks down the Freshman of the Week honors. All right, we continue our college basketball check-ins as now we take a look at the Memphis Tigers. And always a pleasure to have Frank Murtaugh. He is with the Memphis Flyer and Memphis Magazine. Frank, thanks for being here once again.
Jeff, it's great to be with you. Happy late basketball season. Yeah, we're almost to the month of madness.
Yes, almost to the finish line for that. And we're going to check in now on the Tigers, who are sitting at 9-5 in conference, 15-9 overall, currently tied for third in the conference. So if you can give me your overall assessment to the season to date, what would that be?
Schizophrenic, Jeff. It has been a schizophrenic season here in Memphis. Since Penny Hardaway took over 4 years ago, it's always interesting. And that has certainly been the case over the last 2.5, 3 months. The Tigers started off top 20 ranking, won their first 5 games, and it's been a season of streaks. They had a 4-game losing streak. Everyone was ready to jump off the bridge downtown. Won 3 in a row, lost 3 straight, and then most recently they reeled off a 6-game winning streak, including most importantly an upset of Houston in Texas, and that has the Tigers right now inside the bubble, if, as it were. If you're listening to these bracketologists who want to say, who's going to make the dance and who isn't. So we're in a position here in Memphis with a team that 3 of their last 4 games are home, and they played well at home, 10-2. If the Tigers can, take care of business on their home floor, you're looking at what could be the end of an 8-year drought in terms of NCAA tournament appearances. So that's a big deal, and it would be the first appearance for a team coached by Penny Hardaway, so a big deal times 2. But schizophrenia is the word. That they looked awful against SMU last weekend, Jeff, and they've got another couple days off before Temple comes to town Thursday night, and we'll just have to see. We'll have to see which Tiger team shows up, and we're hoping for the Dr. Jekyll, I guess.
Well, it's interesting too because that 6-game win streak was sandwiched around losses to Memphis a month apart. And as you said, there was the most recent performance against SMU was not a good one. Yeah, I guess the thing is, they got they had some injuries, so they were without some key ingredients for a bit, and they got those back now, and now they have that 4-game run to close out the season, with their chance to continue to stay in the top half of the bracket for the conference tournament.
Right, Jeff. You mentioned the injuries. Penny has been in a position much of the season, almost like a child with too many toys to play with. If you think back to when you're 5, and if your parents are like mine, there's just too much, and it gets to be almost a frenzy. Which package am I opening? What am I playing with next? And Penny was rotating as many as 11, 12 players into a 20-minute half of basketball games, and it just was not working. The injuries, if anything, they forced Hardaway to focus on what he did have, establish some roles for players, and once 2 key components came back, DeAndre Williams and Landers Nolley, he figured out, and it was the Houston game where it became most apparent, he figured out who the starting 5 is. And that rotation was squeezed, particularly in the second half against the Cougars, and the Tigers looked better than they have all season long. I would imagine the remainder of the season, if they remain healthy, Nolley and Williams, along with the freshman star Jalen Duren, and 2 guards, 2 veteran guards, Alex Lomax and Lester Quinones, are going to get the bulk of the playing time. As I said, I think there was at one point Penny reached his 16th starting lineup in like I don't know which number of games it was at that point, not many more than 16. There's been so much experimentation. But he's got his 5. He's got the 5-man unit that we now know can beat a top 10 team, as they did against Houston. If those 5 can play that way with some, a little supporting help from the sharpshooter Tyler Harris comes off the bench. He's a senior, and can contribute 3-pointers. They can be a very good team, and I'm convinced they can get to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. But back to that schizophrenic, label, Jeff, they're also capable of making the tournament and just getting, waxed in the first game. So it's a tough team to get your hands around. It kind of makes game night exciting because you really don't know, what you're going to see.
Yeah, and of course, Penny Hardaway always manages to land one of those super freshmen, and of course, Josh Minot. Tell me a little bit about him.
Minot's a really talented young man, and he arrived in the shadow of Jalen Duren and Amani Bates, the 2 top 5 guys Penny landed. But Minot, he's got NBA length, as they say. He can rebound and play at the rim, above the rim. He's a terrific defender in part because of that length. Minot's the kind of guy I would like to see put in a second year in the college ranks, even a third, and I think he's going to have a long pro career. I mentioned that quintet that Penny has landed on, and Minot's not among them. You may have noticed. Mm-hmm. He does have a role. He's going to be the 6th, 7th, 8th guy into the rotation. He'll be playing if they do get into the NCAA tournament. I don't think a lot of minutes, but a really talented guy. If anything, he's superseded whatever role Amani Bates was going to play this season. And Amani has been all but shut down with a back ailment of late. But Minot's been a fun young man to watch, and just a really bright, sharp kid. I think he's on his way.
And of course, you mentioned, particularly as we go to the conference tournament for starters, depth will be important, and you'll want to stay into that top half of the bracket to get that first round bye, because the 4-4 is just a too big a mountain to overcome. And of course, you all want to have depth, and you also, I'm curious as to how Memphis will handle the pace of play slowing down, because that tends to happen in tournament time too.
Yeah, it really does, and they're not the defensive team they were a year ago, Jeff. Although on the offensive side, they're shooting the ball better. They lead the American Athletic Conference field goal percentage. And with a guy like Duren, Jalen Duren's the guy that I would, any of your listeners who haven't seen the Tigers, he's the guy you might want to circle and look at. He's going to be a top 10 NBA pick come June. And with a guy of Duren's size, and I'm really old school when it comes to this, Jeff, I still think size wins basketball games, and talented big men who can play down there on the block, and Jalen can actually get outside and shoot from 12, 15 feet. Duran's the kind of guy that if it becomes a sort of a slog, if the game is slowed down, I think he can be a difference maker. He leads the league in rebounding and block shots. He's a precocious talent, barely 18 years old, or just turned 19. But he's a really talented kid, and I think he'll make the difference. The Tigers, as far as that tournament goes, you mentioned that, and I think it's a big deal for Memphis. There was a time when Memphis was an automatic finalist in the Conference USA tournament for many years, and those days are over. And they've reached the AAC final once and lost to UConn 6 years ago. But it'd be nice to make that weekend in Texas something special and at least get to the final. They want to avoid SMU, clearly, Jeff. They do not match up well with the Mustangs. So right now, I believe SMU would be 2, Memphis 3, so they'd be in a bracket to face each other in the semifinals. That's not the scenario the Tigers want. So they've got 4 games to do something about that, and we'll just have to see.
Yeah, and of course, we got the 4 games remaining with Temple, Wichita State, South Florida. And lo and behold, they closed the season with Houston, and I think back to a year ago with that entertaining finish they gave us then, and then another tremendous game in the conference tournament. So you got to, Mike Aresso's got to be smiling to have that matchup on the last Sunday of the regular season.
I think it's become the rivalry in the league. And unfortunately, it's short-lived. With Houston, bound for the Big 12 in the near future. The brand of basketball they've played, though, over the last, I guess you'd call it, 13 months, has been scintillating. Kelvin Sampson, Penny has acknowledged that Kelvin Sampson's one of the standards he uses for how to lead a college program and how to get his players to play. Sampson doesn't leave things on the table. It doesn't mean his team wins every day. They obviously met Memphis on its best day and didn't look too good in that second half a couple weeks ago. But that showdown, the first weekend in March, which precedes all the madness, maybe it'll kick off the madness. It'll be a nationally televised game, matinee here in Memphis, and all bets are off. The Tigers can win that game. The way the Memphis Tigers can make their conference tournament more comfortable is to beat Houston a second time. Because if they do that and take care of at least 2 out of 3, Temple, Wichita State, USF, they're going to be NCAA tournament bound almost regardless of what happens in the conference tournament. They don't want to flame out in their first game, but a second win over Houston would be huge.
Yeah. And it is very interesting, the Houston and SMU certainly giving us a race for the conference regular season title. And, of course, Memphis in lockstep now with, Tulane, which is having a far better expected season. But to me, no surprise that Ron Hunter has that team finally making some moves. And Temple, after a slow start, has become a tough team to play against.
It's such a good league. It's an underrated league, Jeff. I find myself sort of bristling when I read all this commentary that there's no way the American is a 3-bid league, and I wonder why not. It's there are teams. Tulane, beat Memphis down in New Orleans. East Carolina beat the Tigers in North Carolina when they played. Those are 2 one-point losses that could prove excruciating if the Tigers actually end up on the wrong side of that bubble. It's a strong league, and I've come to not, take any game for granted, and I don't do a lot of predictions on game night because, particularly with this Tiger team playing the way it is, you can be bitten. I mean, Memphis, swept Cincinnati this year, Jeff. That's not something that's been done much in my adult life. I mean, you got to go back more than 20 years to see a Tiger team win 2 from the Bearcats. It's a very good league, and I'm excited about the tournament. I honestly wish it was here in Memphis. I'm not going to be able to travel to Fort Worth, but it's going to be a fun batch of basketball games over 4 days.
Yeah, and you do bring up an interesting aspect of the fact that I think from a talent perspective, the American is worthy of a 3 or 4 bid league. but they do not get the same credit for being a tough league. Like, everybody's almost projecting like the entire Big Ten going to the tournament. And they beat up on each other all season long. So, and I'm not saying the American is as good as the Big Ten, but the gap can't be that big.
No, it's silly. It's silly when a league, gets 6 teams. I think the ACC, as big as it is, may have had 7 1 or 2 years. That's absurd. The 6th or 7th team from a league, they're not going to advance far in the tournament. Whereas, you look at whoever finishes 3rd place in the AAC. I would take them their opening game. I'd probably take them their first 2 games the tournament's weekend, the tournament weekend. So it's an underrated league. Those of us, you and I, and I imagine many of your listeners who follow it regularly, we see the brain of basketball, and it may not be your father's or grandfather's college hoops in terms of style and fluidity, but relative to the way the game is played across the country now, the AAC is a rather strong league.
Yeah, and they've definitely fared well out of conference as well. So it is one of those big things where, at least the good news is, unlike football, these teams will get a seat at the table in the big dance at least. So there is at least that good to be said as far as that goes. Well, Frank, as always, we appreciate your time, and if you would please give me some shameless plugs for your coverage of the Tigers and more.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, go to MemphisFlyer.com. That's where you read my sports coverage for the Tigers. I'm still selling books, Jeff. Trey's Company's a novel I wrote. Find that at Amazon.com. It's Trey, Trey's Company. Coming-of-age novel that I'm trying to get in the hands of as many readers as possible. Again, the best way to purchase that is just search on Amazon. And, I will be here. Tiger games in and out throughout, hopefully late into March. I haven't been doing much March writing on basketball in recent years, but I hope to this year. So I really appreciate you having me.
Outstanding. Frank Murtaugh, as always, we appreciate it.
Take care.
And we'll be right back with Ben Stout, our Knightline Sports Network basketball analyst on UCF right after this.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com.
All right, now we continue with our college basketball check-ins as we take a look at UCF. And joining us now is my Knightline Sports Network colleague, our basketball analyst, Ben Stout. Ben, as always, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. As always, it's great speaking with you, and ready to talk some UCF hoops as we come down the final stretch of the season here.
Yeah, we are hitting down the home stretch, heading into March, and the Knights 16-9 overall, 8-7 in conference, and right now sitting outside the all-important top 5 as far as the first round of the conference tournament goes. And I guess the one statement that comes to mind for me with UCF basketball this season is the old line that the only thing consistent has been inconsistency. How would you assess the season?
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty fair assessment, Jeff. I mean, it's been a bit of a struggle this season where every kind of big opportunity that we had, with the exception of maybe at Miami, which is only the second game of the season, second or third game of the season, and then the Michigan game and a few others here and there. It just kind of seemed like every big opportunity that this UCF team had this season, unfortunately, we could not come out on top, and in most cases lost by double digits. So against those kind of, when you're looking at the net rankings and some of the matchups that they've had, while we do have a quad one win against that win on the road in the early season against Miami, basically every other quad one game, that every other quad one opportunity that we had, unfortunately, was a loss by almost all of them were double digits. So it was just, when we matched up against the top tier of the country, we just didn't quite cut it. And especially that occurred when we were away from home. We are a team that relies on shooting and relies on hot shooting from players like not only Darren Green Jr., but Brandon Mahan, and then Darius Perry as well. And unfortunately, there hasn't been too many games this year where all three of those guys were on at the same time. And probably our most consistent, well, no doubt our most consistent three-point shooter, Darren Green Jr., we didn't quite see that consistency from the other two guards in Mahan and Perry, just kind of on again, off again all season. And so that kind of, those two guys in particular kind of are a microcosm of this team as a whole. Unfortunately, just kind of beat up on the lesser opponents, and any big opportunity that we have, we just couldn't quite get over the hump.
And what can you put your thumb on it as to what causes all this? Because they'll play real hot for a half and go real cold. And they might have a little hot streak in games and then go cold for several games. Can you place your finger on it in any fashion?
It's hard to zero in on one or two things. I think that this is a team that is very capable defensively, and obviously Donnie Dawkins is somebody who tries to really emphasize defensive pressure and being strong in not only the full court press, but in the half court sets as well. The unfortunate side of this is that I feel like when shots aren't falling for this team, it actually affects them on both ends of the floor. And it most of the time when you're looking at a Division I basketball program, you say kind of defense helps out the offense, right? Or it kind of like defense plays into the offense, plays into offense. So, when you're playing hard defense, it'll turn into great offense. Now, obviously that's true when we're getting steals and everything. It's true kind of in a general sense. But what I've noticed with this team, unfortunately, is that if they're not hitting shots and they're not seeing the ball fall in the hoop on the offensive end, they get a little complacent and kind of down on themselves, which affects their defense overall. And so, and the other thing I'll kind of point to, I think, is shot selection just overall. When they might go into games with a pretty good game plan and pretty good offensive sets that they're going to concentrate on that end. But once they get into a little bit of trouble and once, a couple of shots go off the iron and they aren't quite in a flow offensively, unfortunately, players like Mahan and Perry tend to kind of go to a little bit of hero ball, a little bit of one-on-one, and they don't get the teammates involved in the way that they should. And the movement without the ball, kind of the flow of the offense kind of gets broken up, and they go to a lot of isolation and kind of bad shot selection. And so I think that has gotten them into trouble, especially against those top tier teams, especially against a team like Houston that is so disciplined on defense. They're not going to let you get away with just kind of jacking it up and hoping it goes in. So that kind of live by the three, die by the three, it kind of turns into dying by the three with that type of mentality.
Yeah, and I think the other frustrating fact for Knights fans is when you look at the talent that's on this roster, and how deep it is, to not be in a better position than where they are now, just does feel like it's a disappointing season.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that part, Jeff. I mean, going into this season, we returned basically 90. I think it was something like 98% of our scoring from last season. We returned basically all, I believe, something like 8 of our top scorers from last year. We returned all of them, and not only that, you couple that with one of the best, or ranking-wise, one of the best recruiting classes, and then in UCF history, and you kind of add some transfers like Mccabe, Zhang, you just kind of seemed like it was all lining up to be a very high-caliber season for Dawkins and the Knights, and unfortunately, it just, like I said, we kind of were able to take care of business against some of the teams that were at our talent level or below. But every time we matched up with somebody who was, just kind of a high caliber opponent, with the exception of one time, it just seemed like we couldn't get it done. And that has been a really frustrating part of this season to watch.
Yeah, and of course, we look at the as we come down to the stretch of the regular season, 3 games left with Cincinnati, at Tulane, and obviously Tulane is become an upper conference team, and then finishing out at Tulsa, and Tulsa certainly has been a place in both football and basketball. The UCF has had its fair share of trouble, and they are behind for that 5th spot, and they would need some help even if they were to win all 3 games, which would present a 4 win in 4 days in order to win the conference tournament. And that's a big mountain to climb.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if they can win all 3 of these games coming up, at least 2 of those. Well, Cincinnati is just below UCF, but I certainly think there's some scoreboard watching that they'll have to do. But I mean, these opponents that they have certainly will prepare them well for the conference tournament, and hopefully they have a lot of momentum if they can take all 3. And I agree with you, Jeff. I mean, I think at Tulane is going to be the true test of those 3 games. They're a very tough team. They're a little bit of a surprise team, even though you saw some glimpses of what they could be towards the end of last season. And so I think, Tulane has just really been a solid team overall, and you got to think that that's probably going to be the toughest matchup of the 3. But really getting that 5th seed, getting a 5 seed or above, which it looks like you're basically tracking towards right on the edge there. That's extremely important to be able to rest a little bit, to be able to get that first round bye going into the conference tournament. It'll be important. Now, if we take all 3, that gets us to 19 wins on the season. Obviously, you need to win 1 game in the conference tournament to get to 20. That starts to look good for other postseason opportunities like the NIT. It's going to take a tall task, in my opinion. I'd be pretty shocked if we could make that big of a run to run through the conference tournament and win the whole thing with teams like Houston and teams like Memphis playing so well right now. They seem to kind of get it together recently, and so it's going to be a tall task. But hey, I know we kind of been talking about this season being a disappointment, but the thing about this team is it's true to say that they are extremely talented, and they can beat anybody in the country at any given night. Unfortunately, they have not been able to do that against the top tier this year, but I think they're talented and deep enough to become successful against some of the top teams in the conference. And so Hey, I guess crazier things have happened in March in college basketball, right? So they got a chance here, I guess.
Yeah, you always have a chance until you don't. And then the other aspect of this, once conference tournament play starts, the game slows down. Does that help or hurt UCF?
Well, I think UCF is at their best when they are not only full court pressing, but they're trying to push the ball and push the tempo and try to play at a fast pace. Now, they haven't been able to do that as much this season as Coach Dawkins talked about going into the season, and we saw some flashes of that in the early season. But I think when they're at their best, they're really just kind of having that energy level up and having that tempo up. And so that could hurt them a little bit. Now, if it does slow down for them and they have to get into their half-court sets, I think what's going to be a lot more successful than not is essentially if they can get their guards driving downhill towards the basket, especially some of their stronger guards like the freshman Darius Johnson. I think he's been he showed some great flashes, even against Houston. And I know that game didn't work out very well towards the second half, but in the first half especially, Darius Johnson was doing a great job of kind of getting downhill, getting towards the rim on offense, and trying to find his teammates. And I think when you got shooters on the perimeter who can slide to that open spot, instead of just coming off ball screens or coming off a quick catch and shoot action, I think it's going to be a lot better to get those guys open if we can get something going in the paint, whether that's through Mbappe Zhang or a drive and kick action that we haven't seen as much of, only seen flashes of. I think that'll be a formula for success on offense in the conference tournament. So hopefully they can deploy some of that action going into the conference tournament.
I don't know about you, but sometimes I think Darren Green Jr. needs to be a little more selfish. What do you think?
I would agree. I would fully agree. I mean, it kind of does seem like he is he doesn't necessarily pass up shots, but he also he doesn't always run around and get open without the ball and kind of command the ball on offense. I guess that's an easier way to say it. Is he doesn't kind of seem to kind of speak up and kind of let his teammates know, let's go, like give me the ball in my hands, and I'm gonna put this thing on my shoulders, because I mean he's leading the conference in 3-pointers made this season at 75. He's that's 3 a game made, made, and he's one of the top 2 as far as 3-point percentage. So he's our most consistent 3-point shooter by far. And and I think that he does need to kind of vocalize more with his teammates in order to get the ball in the right spot. And I'd much rather, I'll just say it straight up, I'd much rather him, be taking a shot with a hand in his face from 3-point land than anybody else on our team. Especially, I think some of the other top scorers on our team that I think rely a little bit too much on poor shot selection. Yeah,
and of course he hit that big game winner on Sunday against East Carolina. That was a tremendous shot.
It really was, and it was. What was so great about that shot is everyone in the arena knew who was getting that ball.
Yeah.
Everybody watching that game at home and everybody in the arena, including the ECU players, knew where that ball was going. And I'll give Johnny Dawkins credit for drawing it up. I'll give the team credit for getting him the ball in the right position. He said after the game that he was that the first action there with 2.3 seconds left was for him to drive, and he was cut off, and so he knew that he just had to rise up. He kind of had that internal clock in his head. He knew he just had to rise up and shoot it. And man, the ball hadn't even really quite gone through the rim yet before he turned around, kind of like a little Steph Curry move. Kind of looked back at the bench because he knew as soon as it left his hand that it was going in. That was a big time shot, And it was just so awesome to see him do that. I mean, he puts in so much work. I mean, hundreds of shots prior to on game day, probably thousands of shots, on off days. I mean, he just puts in so much work that people don't really see and potentially don't appreciate about him. That I was really happy for him that he was able to put that in. Hopefully it's another momentum builder going into the late stretch of the season and going into the conference tournament, because that game really felt like the Temple game at home in early January. It just felt like we were letting them hang around and letting them just kind of stick around and stay connected to us all the way through the end. And I'm glad that shot went through and we had a great result from it.
Yeah, no question. Before I let you run, I know a few weeks ago UCF had alumni basketball players out at the game. Tell me what that experience was like.
It was just fantastic. I mean, Carlos McCants from the Varsity Knights kind of organized the event, and a few of us kind of helped that along and helped the communication along the way. And it was just a great weekend of events, and one that I think will really build momentum on in continuing this and making it into an annual event in the future. But it was a great weekend. A lot of we had players all back from the 70s all the way up to most recent grads or most recent basketball alumni. I would say that my early 2000s team, kind of like the anywhere from 2000 to about 2008 or so, probably had the most presence there. So it was really special for all of us to kind of get back together, the guys that played together there. But great event on Friday night, and then just being able to spend some time on Saturday and all the events that happened around the game, and all of us going out there at half court. It was at halftime. It was a great weekend, and all of us left saying we can't wait to make this into an annual event and make it bigger every year, because the basketball team and the basketball alumni, we want to have that kind of connection with with all the classes throughout the years. I mean, we're one of the longest kind of the program at UCF that has one of the longest histories, right? And so we're wanting to continue that history and continue to build upon that event every year. It'll be a lot of fun, kind of making that into an annual event and making it bigger.
I can only imagine the guys that played, for Torchy Clark and Joe Dean Jr. Back in those days. Look at what UCF basketball has become now, and everything. You have to be in awe of that legacy that has been built from their time.
Yeah, it absolutely has, and it was great talking with those guys. And I mean, one of them, Calvin Linkenbach, and I probably messed up his last name there, but I mean, he's all over the UCF record books. I was talking with him for a while, and I didn't even realize that he was the longtime coach at Evans High School, and I played for Dr. Phillips, and he coached against me all throughout my time in high school, and so it was just awesome talking with him, and that's just another great example of a guy that played for Torchy and kind of built that foundation, and it was just awesome to talk with all those guys.
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff. Of course, Ben, my colleague at the Knightline Sports Network, you hear him on the Knightline podcast as well as the Knightline at Night Radio Show. And, of course, you can follow him on Twitter at BigSocial32. So, Ben, as always, thanks a bunch. And, of course, the big part of the thing that I like about the month of March is getting down to watch the tournament and exchanging texts with you as all the things unfold. That's always a blast for me.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm looking forward to that as well. We'll definitely exchange texts in this late season stretch here, and then looking forward to March and everything that entails. And hopefully, UCF will be a big part of that. We'll see what type of run that they can put together. But I'm looking forward to some March basketball. It'll be here before we know it.
Absolutely. Ben, thanks again, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Back with final news and notes from around the American after this.
If you haven't figured it out yet, I love Tijuana Flats. I would love them even if they weren't a partner with us on the Knightline Sports Network. They have all kinds of great Tex-Mex food, and it's fresh, by the way. Made to order burritos, tacos, enchiladas, chimichangas, quesadillas, bowls, nachos, and taco salads. And if you haven't tried the queso, you are completely missing out. It is the best queso that I've ever had in my life. Absolutely hands down. And the sauce bar that they have, everything from wild to mild in there. Absolutely awesome, awesome stuff. Not only do I love the food at Tijuana Flats, but I love the company, a UCF-born company. And they give back to the community with the Justin Queso Foundation. So head to your local Tijuana Flats. Tex-Mex for everyone. Hey Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up a menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
Opening week for baseball in the AAC, and our player of the week is Ben Mccabe of UCF. He had the Knights going strong in the season opening sweep of Siena, hit .750 with 7 runs scored, 2 home runs, and 6 RBIs, and he had 2 hits each in all 3 games, including a 3-run homer in the series finale. The pitcher of the week, David Litchfield, starting the season opening contest for the Knights. As he moved in from the bullpen, tossed 6 scoreless innings, the redshirt senior struck out 8 batters, allowing only 2 hits and no walks on just 77 pitches. Turning to softball, the player of the week is Sydney McKinney of Wichita State, as she helped them in a 2-2 split in a competitive tournament at number 10 Arkansas, batting .438 with 5 extra base hits, 5 RBIs, and 5 runs scored, and finished the weekend with 3 multi-hit games and scored a run in each start during that event. The pitcher of the week, Georgina Korick of South Florida, dominant in the circle for the 2nd straight tournament against high-caliber competition, going a perfect 3-0 with a .33 ERA in 3 complete game wins against major conference opponents at the St. Pete Clearwater Elite Invitational. Scattered 10 hits over 21 innings. That's a .130 batting average against, and walked just 3 batters with 28 strikeouts. Had a 2-hitter with 1 walk and 9 strikeouts in a shutout against Notre Dame. Allowed 3 hits and an earned run with 6 strikeouts in a victory against number 7 Oklahoma State, and then surrendered an unearned run on 5 hits with a season-high 13 strikeouts versus Wisconsin. Turning to tennis, the AAC player of the week is Cody Pearson of Tulsa. Led them to a 4-3 win against Arkansas in the Golden Hurricanes' only match from last week. He was a 6-4 winner in number 1 doubles and picked up the clinching team point at number 1 singles with a 1-6, 6-1, 6-4 decision, improved to 5-2 for the number 1 singles position on the season. The women's tennis player of the week is Nicole Petchey of SMU, went 1-1 in both singles and doubles play last week, delivering 2 clutch performances to help SMU to a 4-3 win against Mississippi State. She paired with Winslow Huff for a 7-6 win at number 3 doubles to clinch the first team point of the match, and followed with a 4-6, 6-2, 6-1 win at number 5 singles, closing the third set by winning 4 straight games to break a 3-3 tie in the team score. And turning to lacrosse, the AAC Attack Player of the Week, Danielle Pevinelli of Florida, scored 6 goals with 2 assists to figure in 8 of Florida goals, 11 goals in their 15-11 loss to number 2 North Carolina. The midfielder of the week is Quinn Nicole of Temple, had 12 goals and an assist with 7 ground balls, 2 draw controls, and 2 caused turnovers in 2 victories last week. The defensive player of the week, Melissa Hawkins of Vanderbilt, had helped lead them to a 14-12 win against number 12 Notre Dame as she led the Commodore defense that limited the Fighting Irish to 5 second-half goals. She caused 3 turnovers and a game-high 4 ground balls, leading the team in both categories. And the freshman of the week is Leah Bestany of East Carolina, had 4 goals and an assist in 2 games as East Carolina got up to their first 3-0 start in program history. That concludes this episode. As always, please follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88. And you can also follow the Knightline Sports Network at UCF_Knightline. This has been the AAC Report only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.